Many viewers of the masterpiece classic program Downton Abbey find themselves wishing they could spend some time in the early 1900s world of the Yorkshire estate. And this summer, they can get pretty close in Lake Placid. Pretty close to the costumes, at least. The Dressing the Abbey exhibit at the Lake Placid Center for the Arts features 35 costumes, all created for the drama by the London costume house Cosprop Ltd. Fans say they appreciate seeing the lavish evening attire of the Crawleys, as well as the clothing that helped define those who work to keep things in order in the elegant home.
I loved that we had the portion of the exhibit is designated to the servants, right? They're such a big part of the show, and specifically Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Hughes is the head of the housekeeping, right? So Mr. Carson's the butler, but Mrs. Hughes has everything else. And in such a large home, you know, they don't want things stolen and stuff, so there's certain rooms and stuff that only Mrs. Hughes has access to. And so seeing her always, every single show, without a doubt, she's got all of her keys, and that really shows that she's the only one that is able to open the doors.
Downton Abbey fan Elisa McIntosh of Saranac Lake never thought she'd get so close to the beadwork and lace of Downton dresses in the North Country.
Saranac Lakes, Lake Placid were so tiny. When I found out that we were getting this exhibit, I was blown away. Like the fact that such a cool show abroad, that our little towns are able to get something so big and that's so popular throughout the world. It's really cool.
I don't watch a lot of television, but I do have to say I am a super fan of Downton Abbey.
Lake Placid resident Margie Philo says she appreciates the history lessons offered by the program and exhibited through the clothing.
I found that the Downton Abbey episodes were very interesting because it followed historically, not just what was happening with wars or different periods of cars evolving, but the costumes were extremely interesting in that they followed the historical evolution of that, where women were in the beginning, first season or two, wearing corsets, and then as that changed, they were wearing more free-flowing costumes, right into some of the later episodes where the 1920s came in, and the younger women in the episode were wearing more flapper dresses. It was very interesting. Hats evolved and jewelry evolved. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Mary's dress, that red one in there, it's really beautiful, and she would wear it several times throughout the seasons. It's like this beautiful dark red, and I love almost like the vest detail in it. It's just so beautiful. And so it's really cool with Lady Mary's kind of like almost like a villain in the show, but you kind of hate to love her in a way. And so I always love seeing what she's wearing in the show. It's always just like slightly more elevated than her sisters and just a really cool, more mature outfits that she wears.
Managing Director John Donk of the Lake Placid Center for the Arts helped secure the North Country stop for the traveling exhibition, thanks to his enthusiasm for all things Downton. That's according to the curator of Dressing the Abbey.
I am a fan of Downton Abbey. I'm not a super fan. You know, a lot of people have seen the shows like each episode 12 times. I've seen every episode and both movies once. But you know, a lot of the costumes I recognize. And when we were unpacking, you know, there was one costume in particular that Mary is wearing when she meets Matthew Crawley for the first time. And that was a really exciting moment to, you know, experience that.
One of my favorite outfits was in the beginning of season 1 when Lady Mary first met Matthew, and she was wearing a very long, flowing riding outfit. And back then, ladies didn't ride straddle, they rode side saddle. So it's very interesting the way she addressed the horse and put her dress out to cover the back. And the saddle is very interesting. That's here. You can see how she had to sit and how really more dangerous it was for women to ride back then. And so I think that that dress in particular is very interesting to see in person.
One of the outfits that speak the most to me is Maggie Smith's with her crocheted lace overpiece of her dresses. I always admire it whenever I watch the show. I embroider and I knit, and I've never really attempted to make clothing or do a piece like that. Whenever I see that, it makes me want to create.
Any costume Maggie Smith wore, you can associate with a ridiculously fabulous line that she gave. So, you know, even this outfit, I remember the scene that was in.
One of my favorite outfits during the seasons was the one that Elizabeth McGovern wore, Lady Grantham Cora. She wore a beautiful hand-embroidered, hand-stitched dress to her daughter Edith's wedding, which didn't occur. She was jilted at the altar. And there's a very haunting scene where she's sitting back at the castle trying to comfort Edith, and the dress is just so elegant on her with a long set of pearls. And I think it was representative of how she dressed throughout the 6 seasons.
Refined fashion collided with brash behavior when the outspoken American mother, played by Shirley MacLaine, wore these costumes.
It's really interesting to see these costumes in person. When you see them on TV, you can't appreciate the amount of detail and hand stitching, the beading, the embroidery, and I think that costume makers, especially during that era, who were making clothing, were so talented and didn't have all of the equipment to work with we have now, yet they really produced such amazing, beautiful pieces of fabrics, and to be able to see them in person is so much fun.
This is a time where everything was handmade. And so all these costumes, true to form, you know, all the beads, every single element of the costumes is done by hand.
In addition to the costumes, visitors will also recognize some props from the show.
I really love that just from the beginning, you've got like this coming together of all the women in the show of like trying to survive in this very male-dominated era and really trying to like show, you know, how capable they actually are. So seeing the exhibit, you know, it really solidifies seeing it all together, how much we travel throughout time with the family in Downton Abbey. So seeing the bicycle back there for Lady Edith, how much in the beginning, you know, you've got how appalled that they might be that Lady Mary might take over the estate, but then you get to the point where you've got the bicycle, where women are riding bicycles rather than just side saddling on a ride, right, for the horses. So taking on the more masculine roles, and I really loved that they embraced that things are, you know, modernizing and becoming more feminist than they would have been before.
The most important thing that people ask us every day is, you know, are these the real costumes? And the answer is yes. This is not a museum recreation of the costumes of Downton Abbey. These are the ones they wore. So there, you know, you can see on a couple of the dresses where someone rubbed up against a set piece and, you know, they're missing a few sequins or beads. You know, there's a few tea stains on some knees of some of the dresses. You know, these costumes have a life.
You may see the exhibit Dressing the Abbey from now until September 10th at Lake Placid Center for the Arts. It's open every day from 10 to 6, and you may purchase tickets at the door. Head to lakeplacidarts.org for more information.
Spotlight is supported by the Glenn and Carol Pearsall Adirondack Foundation, dedicated to improving the quality of life for year-round residents of the Adirondack Park.